Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna. We're studying Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 11, entitled The Universal Form, text 55. It's March 16th, 2025. Here online, and there's Anasuya and Lakshmi Priya from, I think they're in Prabhupada House in Melrose, Florida. Welcome, Sylvan from somewhere in the British Isles, and Anandini from Wheeler, Switzerland, and here in our place in Alachua, Florida, there's Rachel, Sydney, Damayanti, Haley, and Rosa. And so we'll start with the Sanskrit words responsively. Mat karma krin, mat paramo, mat bhakta, sangavarjita, nirvaira, sarva bhuteshu, ya, sa, mam, eti, pandava, mat karma krin, mat paramo, mat bhakta sangavarjita, nirvaira sarva bhuteshu, yasamam eti pandava, mat karma krin, mat paramo, mat bhakta sangavarjita, nirvira sarva bhuteshu, yasamam eti pandava, mat karma krin, mat paramo, mat bhakta sangavarjita, nirvira sarva bhuteshu, yasamam eti pandava. Mat karma krin, mat paramo, mat bhakta sangavarjita, nirvaira sarva bhuteshu, yasamam eti pandava, mat karma krin, mat paramo, mat bhakta sangavarjita, nirvaira sarva bhuteshu, yasamam eti pandava. Mat karma krin, mat paramo, mat bhakta sangavarjita, nirvaira sarva bhuteshu, yasamam eti pandava. Would anyone online like to lead the chanting of the verse?
Mat karma krin mat paramo,
Mat karma krin, mat paramo,
mat bhakta sangha varjita,
mat bhakta sangavarjita,
nirvaira sarva bhuteshu,
nirvaira sarva bhuteshu,
yasamam eti pandava.
yasamam eti pandava. Okay, we'll study the word meanings. We'll study the word meanings. Mat karma krit,
Crit.
engaged in doing my work.
Engaged in doing my work.
Mat parama, concerning me, the supreme.
Concerning me, the supreme.
Mat bhakta,
Bhakta.
engaged in my devotional service.
Engaged in my devotional service.
Sangavarjita,
Sangavarjita.
freed from the contamination of previous activities and mental speculation.
Free from the contamination of previous activities and mental speculation.
Nirvaira,
Nirvaira.
without an enemy.
Without an enemy.
Sarva bhuteshu,
Sarvabhuteshu.
to every living entity.
To every living entity.
Ya,
Ya.
one who. Sa,
Sa.
he,
He.
mam, unto me.
He.
Eti,
Eti.
comes.
Comes.
Pandava,
Panda.
O son of Pandu.
O son of Pandu.
Translation. My dear Arjuna, one who is engaged in my pure devotional service, free from the contaminations of previous activities and from mental speculation, who is friendly to every living entity, certainly comes to me. Purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Anyone who wants to approach the supreme of all the personalities of Godhead on the Krishna Loka planet in the spiritual sky and be intimately connected with the Supreme Personality Krishna must take this formula as is stated by the Supreme himself. Therefore, this verse is considered to be the essence of Bhagavad Gita. So quite a especially important verse, the essence of Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is a book directed to the conditioned souls who are engaged in the material world with the purpose of lording it over nature and who do not know of the real spiritual life. The Bhagavad Gita is meant to show how one can understand his spiritual existence and his eternal relationship with the Supreme Spiritual Personality, and to teach one how to go back home, back to Godhead. Now, here is the verse which clearly explains the process by which one can attain success in his spiritual activity, devotional service. As far as work is concerned, one should transfer his energy entirely to Krishna conscious activities. No work should be done by any man except in relationship to Krishna. This is called Krishna karma. One may be engaged in various activities, but one should not be attached to the result of his work, but the result should be done for him. For example, one may be engaged in business, but to transform that activity into Krishna consciousness, one has to do business for Krishna. If Krishna is the proprietor of the business, then Krishna should enjoy the profit of the business. If a businessman is in possession of thousands and thousands of dollars, and if he has to offer all this to Krishna, he can do it. This is work for Krishna. Instead of constructing a big building for his sense gratification, he can construct a nice temple for Krishna, and he can install the deity of Krishna and arrange for the deity's service as is outlined in the authorized books of devotional service. This is all Krishna karma. One should not be attached to the result of his work, but the result should be offered to Krishna. One should also accept prasadam, food, the remnants of offerings to Krishna. If, however, one is not able to construct a temple for Krishna, one can engage himself in cleansing the temple of Krishna. That is also Krishna karma. One can cultivate a garden. Anyone who has land, in India at least, any poor man has a certain amount of land, can utilize that for Krishna by growing flowers to offer him. He can sow tulasi plants because tulasi leaves are very important, and Krishna has recommended this in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna desires that one offer him either a leaf or a flower or a little water, and he is satisfied. This leaf especially refers to the tulasi. So one can sow tulasi leaves and pour water on the plant. Thus, even the poorest man can engage in the service of Krishna. These are some of the examples of how one can engage in working for Krishna. The word matparama refers to one who considers the association of Krishna in his supreme abode to be the highest perfection of life. Such a person does not wish to be elevated to the higher planets such as the moon or sun or heavenly planets, or even the highest planet of this universe, Brahmaloka. He has no attraction for that. He is only attracted to being transferred to the spiritual sky. And even in the spiritual sky, he is not satisfied with merging into the glowing Brahma-Jyoti effulgence, for he wants to enter the highest spiritual planet, namely Krishna Loka, Goloka Vrindavan. He has full knowledge of that planet, and therefore he is not interested in any other. As indicated by the word Madbhakta, he fully engages in devotional service, specifically in the 9 processes of devotional engagement: hearing, chanting, remembering, worshiping, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering prayers, carrying out the orders of the Lord, making friends with him, and surrendering everything to him. One can engage in all 9 devotional processes, or 8 or 7, or at least in one, and that will surely make one perfect. The term Sanghavarjita is very significant. One should disassociate himself from persons who are against Krishna. Not only are the atheistic persons against Krishna, but also those who are attracted to fruitive activities and mental speculation. Therefore, the pure form of devotional service is described in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu as follows: Anya Bila Sita Shunyam Jnana Karmadya Navritam Anukulyena Krishnanu Shilanam Bhaktir Uttama. In this verse, Srila Rupa Goswami clearly states that if anyone wants to execute unalloyed devotional service, he must be freed from all kinds of material contamination. He must be freed from the association of persons who are addicted to fruitive activities and mental speculation. When freed from such unwanted association and from the contamination of material desires, one favorably cultivates knowledge of Krishna. That is called pure devotional service. Anukulyasya sankalpa, patikulyasya varjanam. One should think of Krishna and act for Krishna favorably, not unfavorably. Kamsa was an enemy of Krishna's. From the very beginning of Krishna's birth, he planned in so many ways to kill him, and because he was always unsuccessful, he was always thinking of Krishna. Thus, while working, while eating, and while sleeping, he was always Krishna conscious in every respect, but that Krishna consciousness was not favorable, and therefore, in spite of his always thinking of Krishna, 24 hours a day, he was considered a demon, and Krishna at last killed him. Of course, anyone who is killed by Krishna attains salvation immediately, but that is not the aim of the pure devotee. The pure devotee does not even want salvation. He does not want to be transferred even to the highest planet, Goloka Vrindavan. His only objective is to serve Krishna wherever he may be. I'll read that again. His only objective is to serve Krishna wherever he may be. A devotee of Krishna is friendly to everyone. Therefore, it is said here that he has no enemy. How is this? A devotee situated in Krishna consciousness knows that only devotional service to Krishna can relieve a person from all the problems of life. He has personal experience of this, and therefore he wants to introduce the system, Krishna consciousness, into human society. There are many examples in history of devotees of the Lord risking their lives for the spreading of God consciousness. The favorite example is Lord Jesus Christ. He was crucified by the non-devotees, but he sacrificed his life for spreading God consciousness. Of course, it would be superficial to understand that he was killed. I'll read that again. Of course, it would be superficial to understand that he was killed. Similarly, in India, also there are many examples such as Thakur Haridas. Why such a risk? Because they wanted to spread Krishna consciousness, and it is difficult. A Krishna conscious person knows that if a man is suffering, it is due to his forgetfulness of his eternal relationship with Krishna. Therefore, the highest benefit one can render to human society is relieving one's neighbor from all material problems. In such a way, a pure devotee is engaged in the service of the Lord. Now, we can imagine how merciful Krishna is to those engaged in his service, risking everything for him. Therefore, it is certain that such persons must reach the supreme planet after leaving the body. In summary, the universal form of Krishna, which is a temporary manifestation, and the form of time, which devours everything, and even the form of Vishnu, four-handed, have all been exhibited by Krishna. Thus, Krishna is the origin of all these manifestations. It is not that Krishna is a manifestation of the original Vishvarupa or Vishnu. Krishna is the origin of all forms. There are hundreds and thousands of Vishnus, but for a devotee, no form of Krishna is important, but the original form, two-handed Shyamasundar. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that those who are attached to the Shyamasundar form of Krishna in love and devotion can see him always within the heart and cannot see anything else. One should understand, therefore, that the purport of this 11th chapter is that the form of Krishna is essential and supreme. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 11th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of the universal form. So I'm going to chant a few more mantras to continue to invoke auspiciousness in our gathering. Om Anjanatimmirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragana Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prijana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Bhagavad Gita chapter 11 text 55 Mat Karmakrin Mat Paramo Mat Bhakta Sangavarajita Nirvaira Sarvabhuteshu Yasamam Etipandava. My dear Arjuna, one who is engaged in my pure devotional service, free from the contaminations of previous activities and from mental speculation, who is friendly to every living entity, certainly comes to me. Yes. Okay. So yeah, so a basic logical premise is that something does not come from nothing. That so like the idea is like, oh yes, all of the variety and all of the forms and all of the personality came from nothing that exploded. You can believe that. That would require a lot of blind faith. It's against basic logical premise. So the Vedic aphorism, Janmadyasa yataha, what exists in the effect must exist in the source. Okay, so we notice we've got personality, we've got form. So the source must have personality and form. Hebrew Bible, right? It says B'Tselem Elohim. And when I learned colloquial Hebrew, and we used to make tzilum. Go to the shop, make a tzilum. A tzilum is a photocopy. Okay, so tzilum, it's in the Bible. Not that the Bible talks about photocopies, but it says that humans were made in the image of God. Humans are made in the image of God. Okay, so it's like, oh no, we have form, and we like to communicate, we like to relate, we like friendship, we like romance, we like adventure, we like color, we like personality, we like music, we like dancing. But in the source, in the supreme, in the ultimate, no, it's just a big nothing. It's just a big light bulb. It's a big white light, and there's no logic there. So what exists in the effect must exist in the source. So means we're persons, so our source must be a person. Now, understood. Not a person like us, or a person our experience, a person way out of the 9 dots, a person way out of any box we can conceive. Okay, but must be a person. Again, we shared earlier before, Anandini led Jairada Madhava. Okay, it's like the persons and the forms and the personalities and the qualities of generated by material consciousness. That's like the shadow. So we don't get any sense of what the substantial supreme spiritual person is like, but we can understand, okay, just from the shadow of the tree, we know the real tree must exist. Even though from the shadow we know what's the fragrance, what's the texture. I don't get a clue. But we know the real tree must exist. So from persons and forms and activities in this world, we get a sense, the substance must exist in the source. Okay. So, all right. So that's basic logic. Basic logic. And then a lot of the psychology in rejecting the possibility, incredulity to the possibility of the source as being a person, a lot of that comes from, because once I acknowledge that the source must be a person, and it kind of indicates, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, sarvasya prabhava mata sarvam prabhartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. Then that means that I need to kind of dictates that I need to surrender my life to serve that person. Well, I don't want to do that. So I'll go, at the source, there's nothing. At the source, there's just like a big white light, something like that. Okay. So it can come from envy. I want to be the center. I don't want to serve that supreme person in the center. Okay. And then in the verse and the purport, in the verse and the purport, that talks about association, Sangha Varjita. So association is important in any field. Okay, it's like if I actually want to make progress in self-realization, realizing who I am as not the body, and that's important. To the extent that we misidentify the eternal self with the temporary material body, we will be insecure, we'll be in anxiety, because we're glorious spiritual entities. To the extent that we identify the self with this dead, rotting matter, it's like it's a depressing situation. So, yeah. So it's very important. It's not just abstract philosophy. It relates to the quality of our experience, quality of our life. Okay, so we actually, not just as lip service, I'm into personal growth, I'm into self-realization. We actually want to make progress in realizing who we are as not the body, spirit, soul, understand our natures, Jivara, Srupoi, Krishnara, Nityadas, Krishnara, Tatasta, Shakti, Beta, Beta, Prakash, as the eternal servant of the Supreme Person, and actually transform our lives. Then naturally we're going to associate with others who are like enthusiastic on that path and advanced on that path. And it's not about, similarly in this verse talks about like a devotional soul, a Krishna conscious is friendly to everyone, even if others consider themselves my enemy, They consider themselves that I'm their enemy, or they're my enemy, they want to destroy me. Prabhupada gives the example of Jesus, right? Just like, he had people wanting to crucify him. Okay, so can't get more vicious than that. But Prabhupada's using Jesus as an example. Just like he's saying, he just wants to serve everyone in their highest sense. Please forgive them, they know not what they're doing. Okay, so that's not that we want to imitate that, but we want to cultivate, we want to move towards that saintly quality. So this isn't about rejecting everyone. Oh, you're not in my group, as I often say. Yeah, I'm not. I'm not. I'm not a Hare Krishna. Okay. Yeah. I'm not like, oh yeah, I was a Buddhist, but I was a Phillies fan, but now I root for the Yankees. Like, no, this is it's a science of self-realization. It's not about, like, I was never interested in joining anything. I'm not interested in getting anyone to join anything. I am excited about a scientific experiential process of transformation of quality, transformation of transformation of consciousness that actually leads to self-realization. And as I've often, as you know, I have a liking to develop and facilitate transformational processes, in case you haven't noticed, right? And definitely the most powerful transformational process that I'm aware of from my personal experience is this process of bhakti yoga, of which the Safatov programs are intended to be an extension. Foundational process is this mantra yoga, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The most powerful transformational process I know. It's just the fact. And yeah, and so, right, so if we want to make progress, and we're going to hang out with others who want to make progress. It's not about not liking anyone else. Just like, let's say, so my goal is to be like a top brain surgeon. Okay, so like for years, you're going to hang out with others who are into medicine. You're going to hang out with like the professors. You're going to hang out with like the best in the world. Whether personally or in the books you read. It's not like I put up walls against other people. No, we're friendly to everyone. And like my goal is to be like world-class tennis player. We're going to hang out with other tennis players. And my goal is to be like a really successful business person. We're going to go to the Chamber of Commerce and like, wow, you're more successful than me. You're making tens of millions. Yeah, I want to hang out with you. Our goal is to be a great guitar player. We're going to associate with us. So that's what's talked about here. It's not about rejection. It's just about like, what's our goal? Naturally, our intimate association is going to be with others who are similarly inspired towards that goal. Yeah, thanks for that. Great gardener. Any field. So similarly in spiritual life, like if we're really interested to progress in spiritual life towards love of God, means we're going to associate with others who are similarly interested. Okay, it's very, very positive, and there's so much in this text and purport. Again, Prabhupada mentioned. This is something I know some of you have heard me share this in different capacities. This is the principle of time, place, and circumstance. Okay, so again, we can see like A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami representing the Bhagavad Gita tradition, such affection, admiration for Jesus, like that. So, but aren't you supposed to like go to war with someone? No, because it's like it's the same goal. It's the same goal. It's the same principle. So just like if an example Prabhupada uses in other places in Bhagavad Gita. Okay, let's say someone's a professor of mathematics. Okay, so then her goal means whoever she meets, She's going to meet them where they're at. She's going to meet them where they're at and encourage them empathically to deepen their enthusiasm and knowledge for math. So she's with the first graders, the professor. She'll meet them where they're at. Like, yeah, okay, 2 + 2 is 4. 2 + 2 is 4, okay. And then let's say if she's with the PhD students in tensor analysis, integral calculus, okay. And I'm borrowing these analogies from Prabhupada. Some of you have heard me use these analogies before. So she's going to teach them tensor analysis and integral calculus and how to calculate the area under the curve. So you say, oh, so she's contradicting. There's no contradiction. Now, it is true that teaching calculus includes the 1 + 1 is 2 and 3 + 3 is 9. It includes that. Okay. So Krishna, the Supreme Person, will connect with individuals and groups of individuals where they're at and always encourage them to grow in self-realization, realizing who they are is not the body and spirit, soul, and towards love of the Supreme Person, towards devotional service, the ultimate goal. Okay. The ultimate goal is for us as individual spirit souls to dedicate our consciousness and our life to serve the Supreme Person with love and devotion. Okay. Yeah. So that's what's put out here. Realize who we are is not the body, spirit, soul, and that our bliss is dedicating our life not to serve the illusion that I'm this body, but to use the body in service to the Supreme. And there's a statement from Jesus. I have many things to tell you. You're not ready to bear them. 7th chapter Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Ginam teham saviginam idam vaksham yasheshata yajgatva nirubhyo yaj gatavyam eva shishate. Krishna says, now I'm going to declare to you all knowledge, complete, phenomenal, noumenal, material, spiritual, all knowledge, after knowing which there shall remain no more fundamental principles to be known. Okay. And then, of course, that's expanded in Srimad Bhagavatam Chaitanya Charitamrita. So it's not that someone like Jesus didn't have all the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, but just like he's, like if the professor goes into the first grade, going to teach 2 + 2 is 4. And it Prabhupada talks about prasadam here. That's a major limb of bhakti. And that's so much purification because like we're going to eat. We're going to eat. Everyone likes to eat. I like to eat. Okay. So it's Krishna consciousness. This bhakti yoga, Bhagavad Gita, it's not world rejecting, it's world embracing. So to be spiritual, no more eating. Okay. Okay. That would not be my spiritual path. Means how do we spiritualize? How do we spiritualize the process of eating? How do we spiritualize the process of dancing? How do we spiritualize the process of friendship? Okay, so that's the process of bhakti. Okay, so and then again, an example from what's called the Old Testament, of course. Jesus or the Jews back in those days, they didn't think in terms of the Old Testament. It was just one testament, right? And so, right, so it's described just this area of food and eating. Okay, so it's okay. Before the 10 Commandments, the 10 Commandments appear in a few places in the Old Testament, Exodus, Deuteronomy. But before the 10 Commandments, there are the Noahide commandments. There's other commandments. Actually, there's 613 commandments. 613. I thought there were 10. Pretty simple. No, there are 613. And the religious Jews, they're actually called Haridim. Haridim is a Hebrew word that means anxiety. The religious Jews, it means they're in anxiety to follow all 613. And they're serious, and they get credit for that. I think technically there's 613, but only 413 are valid until like the temple is rebuilt. So some technical, but there's a lot. But anyhow, people are familiar with the 10 Commandments. Before the 10 Commandments, There's other commandments. For example, one of them, God, he, in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, God says, don't slice off the limb of an animal and just eat the limb. If you want to eat dead flesh, dead rotting flesh, like that excites you, okay, then kill the animal. Don't give it unnecessary agony. Okay, right. Now is God saying like, yeah, so if you just kill the animal and eat it, I'm so happy. He's not saying he's so happy. The ideal diet for human beings is given in the first chapter of Genesis, very first chapter of Genesis, which begins Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. But as we've been having some talks, it doesn't actually say in the beginning. The Hebrew is actually in a beginning, very consistent. Because like, we can say like the Judeo-Christian Islamic religions, their conception of time is really quite consistent with that of modern empirical science, very linear. Like it all started with a singularity or a big bang, in the beginning. But what the Hebrew actually says, the very first letter of the Bible, is in a beginning, which is consistent with the Vedic conception of time, secular, a secular paradigm of time, completely outside of the 9 dots. Anyhow, so in that same chapter that starts with in the beginning, in that same chapter, God also says, he says that the ideal, the appropriate diet for humans, all vegetarian stuff, herbs, fruits, seeds, vegetables, like that, all vegetarian. So that's the ideal. Then later, a little bit later, so if God of the Old Testament, if he's saying, don't slice off the limbs of animals and torture them, what's it mean? It means he's talking to people who are doing things like slicing off the limbs of animals and torturing them. Okay, so we can see in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's not telling Arjuna, don't torture animals for your good times. Because, okay, so again, it's just like, it's the example, okay? Like if the professor is he's going, 1 + 1 is 2. So Krishna is giving Arjuna the intricacies of the laws of karma, the relationship between the spirit, soul, and supreme personality of Godhead, the nature of the material energy, the banyan tree example, okay? Okay, so there's no contradiction. No, the details might differ according to time and circumstance, but the principles are always the same. And certainly the principle, okay, we engage in devotional service, all our grunges go away. When? Immediately. 1 moment. Right, this is a pretty well-known lecture from Srila Prabhupada in Australia. And he's in maybe Melbourne. And someone asks him, well, how long does it take to become Krishna conscious? Because for lifetimes, we've been in material. And Prabhupada says, 1 moment. 1 moment. So, yeah, so we chant the names of God. Any name, not that we can make up a name of God. For me, the name of God is Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola. That won't work. You don't need to believe David will. Try chanting Coca-Cola for half an hour. No, I actually don't really recommend it, but if you want to do an experiment, you can do it. Or try chanting any legitimate name of God, any genuine name of God. And so it's described here. There's 9 categories of processes for devotional services. That gets into a whole thing. It's described by Prahlad Maharaj. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Artanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyamatma, Nivedanam, Iti, Pushpara, Pita, Vishnu, Bhaktishchan, Navalakshana, Kritaya, Bhagavat Yada, Tanmanye, Ditam Uttama. 9 processes of devotional service. And they may say the foundational process, that's hearing and chanting the names of God. Hearing and chanting the names of God. Nam Namakari Bahudan Nija Sarva Shaktista Trapitani Amita Smarani Nakalai Tad Shiktava Kripa Bhagavan Mamapi Dordeva Major Shami Hajani Nanuraga God has unlimited thousands of names in different languages. He appears in his name, and they're all purifying. Just yesterday, I was at sort of a religious service. Okay, it was um yeah, it was commemorating the death, actually. That was the passing away of Dahlia Dior. She was actually a pretty well-known singer of Sephardi Jewish music, and it's Mahalakshmi. So some of you know Mahalakshmi. So at Mahalakshmi's home, there was a service, and there was a female rabbi named, it's called a Rebbitzin, who I know actually, Bahira Sugarman, and but mostly it was a celebration party atmosphere. But we had about 5 minutes, and the Rebbitzin, Bahira, probably in her 80s, she led us in the Mourner's Kaddish, the Mourner's Kaddish. So in Judaism, it's a well-known prayer. Viet Gadal, Viet Kadesh, Ma Rabbah. Okay. So it's when someone dies. This is a main prayer in Judaism. But if we look at, and it's like, it has this very sad tune, Viet Gadal, Viet Kadesh, Ma Rabbah. But actually, the meaning, because that's what I was getting into, the meaning, it's like, glorify the name of God. That's what it's all about. It's about, may the name of God be spread and expanded and sanctified and holy. So in any tradition, Jesus is saying again, hallowed be thy name. When we were in the Middle East, we would go to the Muslim villages, and we have our japa and chanting Hare Krishna, and the Muslims would be there with their masbacha. Japa has 108 beads, the masbacha has 27, 108 divided by 4, and we chant together. So to chant the name of God, this is the foundational process. This is the foundational process, and this is common. This is common. Okay, again, the principle for in any legitimate, authorized, authentic spiritual tradition. I'm not talking about some bogus nonsense. But in any authorized spiritual tradition, the principles are going to be the same. The details of the do not and the do chant this name, the details are going to be adjusted. Even this morning we were talking about, because we've been here since 5 a.m. Eastern. Again, in any authorized spiritual tradition, it's recommended those early morning hours, those early morning hours are like, yeah, to be up for those, because there's like free transcendental nectar in the air. I know I was always a night person, and so it's like an austerity for me. But now I don't want to miss the pre-dawn hours, and to use it for sattvic activity, spiritual activity, chanting the names of Krishna, reading Bhagavad Gita at pre-dawn, sunrise hours, right? And so it's a science of devotional service. So we want to make advancement. It's yeah. So when I say, so we choose devotional service, all our gunjis go away. True. It's true. Okay. Completely 100%. I see some skeptical non-verbals. No, I see. Yeah. Both online, in person, kind of really? Okay.
What's a grungy?
Yeah. So all of the talks, all the lamentation and anxiety and material depression and jealousy and envy, choose devotional service, goes away. We can experience that. Now, to be steady on that platform, because of material desires deeply seated within me, I don't find it easy to just, because it's actually this bhakti yoga, which is the actual bliss of the self. It's not dependent on anything material. It's not dependent on any personal growth we've done. It's not dependent on any identifying whatever self-defeating beliefs. Savai pumsam parodharmo yato bhaktirat hokshite I tukya pratyataya yatma suprasidati. Hate means there's no material reason can get in the way of choosing devotional service. But I'm really in ignorance today. I really messed up. Hare Krishna. Okay. All right. Now, so that's simple truth. at the same time, I don't want to be simplistic. Okay, and that's why it's recommended to make it easier to make that choice at each moment. It's recommended that we cultivate sattvic habits. We cultivate sattvic habits in terms of our relationship with everything, our relationship with eating, sleeping, internet, money management, communication, relationships. Otherwise, if we're addicted to rajasic and tamasic habits, lower self habits, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Evam Bude Prambhuva Samstabhyat Manamatmana Jahishatu Mahabaho Kamarupam Darasatam. He encourages us to control the lower self with a higher self through spiritual intelligence. And that's healthy discipline. And then healthy discipline, not have to discipline. Like choosing to rise early. Okay, so now for the rest of the day, I've given myself a head start. Not just me, everyone here. Right. Absorbing in Bhagavad Gita, absorbing and chanting the names of God, absorbing in philosophical discussion in a sattvic way. Right, so then so my consciousness is relatively more sattvic compared to if, let's say, I got up early and just scrolled the news on the internet, or I sleep till noon. Okay, well then it makes it a lot more difficult to choose devotional service. But once we choose devotional service, all of the natural qualities of the soul, they're naturally accompanying that choice. Okay, and to make it easier and easier to make that choice moment to moment, we're encouraged to cultivate the sattvic habits, transcendental habits like that. So this text reads, this is chapter 11, text 55 of Bhagavad Gita. Mad karma krin mad paramo mad bhakta sangavarijita nirvaira sarvabhuteshu ya samam meti pandava. My dear Arjuna, one who is engaged in my pure devotional service, free from the contaminations of previous activities and from mental speculation, who is friendly to every living entity, certainly comes to me. Hare Krishna. Thanks for hearing Bhagavad Gita. I welcome at this time any questions or comments.
I have a question.
Sydney.
Thank you. So here it states that if anyone wants to execute an avoid devotional service, he must be free from all kinds of material contamination. He must be freed from the association of persons who are addicted to fruitive activities and mental speculation.
Yeah.
So, and then you mentioned that we don't have to reject people who are not, and that we could be friendly and kind to them, of course, but like, where's the line drawn? I guess the definition of association.
Yeah.
That's my question.
Well, thank you, Sydney. I appreciate your question and your response to your question. That's kind of where my response go to. So yeah, it's not talking about like we go to the post office. There's someone who's addicted to fruitive activities. I'm going to leave. But I like in your response, you said, how do we define association? And association, it's not just like, who am I in physical proximity with? Okay. It's just like, let's say if I go to the internet and I read an article, I'm associating with that author and their consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So it's looking at, who are we intimately exchanging with? Who are we intimately exchanging with? It's not just about physical proximity in this in the same room. Yeah. And so same thing. It's just like if someone wants to become a PhD in physics, they're going to like mostly associate with other physics students and professors. Mm-hmm. And sure, they might be in the same proximity with others, maybe even go here and there, a party, this and that. But their main association to advance towards their goal is with those who are going to support them to achieve your physics goal. So similarly, for our goal is self-realization, love of God, I mean that's going to be our intimate association. Mm-hmm. And then we fill ourselves up. We endeavor to fill ourselves up so much with that consciousness that whoever we associate with, they naturally become more interested in self-realization. Rather than if someone's like not particularly interested in sattvic living, and if we're like giving our heart vulnerably to them, then the diamond we are is going to get covered.
Mhm. Yeah, because I was wondering how we manage, relationships with family members and other people that we're close with who are not, in this certain consciousness, and how to be with them, because of course we're not going to step away from our family and
Yeah,
things like
yeah.
that. So how is it recommended that we associate with them in a different way, without
Yeah.
ignoring our own consciousness?
Thanks for sharing, Sydney. Thanks for asking. Well, some of you know part of my life history. Actually, at one point, this was back more than 40 years ago, I made a choice to, like, with some seriousness, practice bhakti yoga. And before that, my main service was taking lots of prasadam and dabbling here and there. I said, no, I really want to commit to this. And actually, my parents kidnapped me. I was actually kidnapped. This was 1984. Some of you are familiar with that story. And I'm just giving I have some experience of, and so I'm not going to go through all the chapters of my biography, but if we fast forward a little more than 25 years, my parents became not just neutral, because they were inimical, they were hostile to my choice, but they became not just neutral. Both my mother and father, they were actually chanting Hare Krishna when they left their body. My mother in 2010, my father in 2012. So yeah, it's not about rejecting. It is about being empathic and friendly and respectful and being firm on boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. Being firm on boundaries. So that's the principle. I could share more about my experience on that, and yeah, to be clear about the boundaries that are going to be protective for me in my progress and protective for others. Because if I'm allowing others to violate my boundaries, and then that kind of ruins my spiritual life, that's not good for them. So boundaries, firm boundaries, friendly, empathic, not walls, and then in honoring those boundaries, endeavoring to relate in such a way that's auspicious for everyone's spiritual consciousness. Thank you, Sydney. Damayanti.
One thing, two things that were coming to mind. Right?
Yeah.
One thing I liked in the purport is, I'll read it.
Sure.
A Krishna conscious person knows that if a man is suffering, it is due to his forgetfulness of his eternal relationship with Krishna. Therefore, the highest benefit one can render to human society is relieving one's neighbor from all material problems.
Mhm.
And you could take that one way, but I know we're Prabhupada's, I know what he means, but one way you could take that is like, oh, I'm gonna relieve my neighbor of all their material problems. That might mean making sure that everyone is fed, has food, roof, shelter.
I'll pay their electric bill.
Or, just like neighbor, human society, like everyone needs to be taken care of materially.
Yeah.
That's not what he means, is everyone's material needs are met. He's not saying that, but it sounds like that. But I think what he really means is the material problems are, as far as I know, Prabhupada is coming from the perspective that the real problems of life are that we're stuck in the cycle of birth, death, old age, disease.
Yeah.
So that's the material problem. We're stuck in the material world.
Yes.
So if we're going to relieve people of the actual material problem, just being stuck in the material world, we're going to give them Krishna consciousness, which is what he's saying, like before and after that paragraph, is what the Lord Jesus Christ took a stand for, what Haridas Thakur took a stand for, what Krishna conscious, God conscious people stand for, is they are, because of that friendliness to the living entity, because of compassion, they want to give God consciousness and share it. Obviously not pushing on people, but that's their mission. So wherever it's received, or however they can find a way, they want to promote people to wake up. And anyway, I like the way he said it, relieving one's neighbor of all material problems.
Yeah, right.
So that's just a comment, and then
Thanks for that comment. Yeah.
you want to share anything off that, but then I have one more thing to share.
Okay, yeah, yesterday, Rachel and I were speaking about the prison analogy, which in a sense is not an analogy. This material world is actually called Durga, which means prison, and the goddess Durga or Kali is the warden of the prison. She has a very responsible, somewhat of a thankless task, responsible service and service to Krishna. And just like, let's say if we visit a prison or like that, we say, oh, okay, I'm going to really help the prisoners. Oh, I have a way to get you a few extra cigarettes per day. Okay. Or, okay, I can get you an extra piece of fruit or something, or an extra 10 minutes in the exercise yard. It's like, well, okay. But the real way to help the prisoners, like support them to transform their consciousness to act in a way where they're going to get out of the prison altogether. Not just like a better condition within the prison. I got my electric bill paid, but they act in a way where they're going to get their parole and they'll be out of prison and they can be a free citizen and go on vacations or hike in the mountain or open a business. So that's really how to be compassionate to the prisoners. Like endeavor, not force, but endeavor to support them to wake up. Let me get out of this prison altogether. And there's a way to be a good prisoner. Follow the rules and regulations. Like that.
Yeah, and thank you. And the other thing I was thinking about, because you mentioned personal growth and the best from the most powerful process you've encountered for actual transformation of spirit is chanting names of God versus personal growth processes, even though you're share them but all tied to, I know you don't tie it to spiritual life.
Yeah.
I've just been thinking a lot about that, how you don't, I've been like having more conviction that you don't have to do personal growth processes. You can just do spiritual processes and be transformed. And it sort of takes a leap of faith to believe that, because I came from a personal growth background.
Yeah, even pre-Sappho.
Yeah, before Sappho, I was doing there's so much personal growth and self-reflection, and I didn't, and I don't really want to talk about that, but I just had a belief system about it.
Yeah.
That it has been breaking down over time. Yeah. And I was just thinking about this one spiritual community, like, Hare Krishna community that I see online, I'm not gonna name, but like they seem to be, I'll just say this lovingly, and this is a loving word, but they seem to be like weirdos. Okay, like odd, like misfits in society, they all came together. And they are so ecstatic chanting Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
And you might know who I'm talking about, but anyway, they seem to be like, maybe there's a rough around, and you've met them, okay, but like maybe they're rough around the edge. I can just tell that, I can tell the consciousness and the energy of them, not a personal growth Hare Krishna community.
They're not, yeah. But
So
they're ecstatic,
they're so blissful and they're so weird and they're like they seem to be losing themselves in Krishna consciousness.
Yeah.
And then they're like, tens of thousands of followers, and they're just like, it's increasing, and they're just like, I think they're like on the way back to Godhead, but they did not have to go through all the personal growth that some of us are trying to go through and drag ourselves through. So I'm just like, I'm excited about that. Like, it sounds liberating. You don't have to do a bunch of self-reflection, but not to ignore. I'm not saying to ignore the weeds in the heart. That people should ever ignore weeds in the heart that would get in the way of,
or softer communication,
or respect for others, and like all the devotional qualities. So we still need to deal with the human condition, but that those people, that community came to mind as like just like rocking it and like going for it, and I just have respect for it and
sure.
attraction for their practice. So
thanks for sharing, Damayanti. Thanks for sharing. And I know who you're talking about. I've personally visited them. And so thanks for sharing. And just like we read this morning before japa, that Prabhupada emphasizes chanting Hare Krishna, all Bhakti Yoga, it includes and transcends the intellectual platform, the emotional platform, the psychological platform. Now, at the same time, if we that sort of approach, it's true, and it can lead to the proverbial spiritual bypass. It can lead to because like in the name of, I'm just chanting Hare Krishna, then maybe nasty to others and I'm intolerant and I'm not deeply understanding their points of view, which Srila Prabhupada emphasized. Because all that that's really like a theme of my intention in developing the software programs, to illustrate conceptually and experientially that all that's good and valid in personal growth, communication training, leadership training, et cetera, coaching, all that's good and valid and truly useful actually finds its completion and perfection in the teachings of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. And because if we neglect that in the name of I'm in the transcendental process, well, if we really are in the transcendental, okay, and we're toward the end of the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Mamchiyo Gabicharena Bhakti Yogena Sevate Saganan Samitidetan Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. And so Krishna is one who's in that transcendental service to God. It transcends the modes of material nature. And that's philosophically true. The danger could be if I assume that that applies to me. Look, I have neck beads. I'm a transcendental person. I chant Hare Krishna. And then all that rajasic, tamasic stuff, maybe jealousy, envy, resentment. I'm never going to deal with it because I'm assuming it's not there. Because the thing is, see, through chanting Hare Krishna and the other processes of bhakti, it's not like, then we don't need to, because the idea is then junk will come up because it's the most powerful process in creation, chanting the names of God. So all sorts of junk will come up, just like I might think, hey, to clean this room might take 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, it's like, wow, there's sandwiches under the bed. Oh my God. Oh my God, this is gonna take days. Okay. So it's like, oh, the process of cleaning isn't working. No, it is working. So similarly, if we're sincere in the process, of bhakti and chanting Hare Krishna, then yes, then junk comes up. Oh, that means it's not working. No, I mean it is working. The envy, the jealousy, the lethargy, the self-deception is going to come up. Then it's our job to pull those weeds. And so right, so like a safer approach, rather than assuming, yes, I'm a transcendental devotee of God, and so I'm above the modes, is to say, okay, I'm attached to lower modes, and part of my bhakti process is to cultivate sattvic principles in communication, in cleanliness, in being tolerant, like that. Anandini.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your class and all the questions and sharings. There's so much just in the purport and then in your sharing. And just what you expressed, the last thing you expressed, I can confirm since I started chanting, I become a better and better person because I'm seeing all the things inside, how I manipulate and make others victims. So I can confirm that.
It's a very encouraging personal testimonial to inspire others to chant.
Well, actually, what you shared, it's a very soothing perspective to see, it's just, I'm just becoming aware of what's inside and it's all coming up now. The cleaning process is working.
Yes.
I wanted to comment on association. It can sound like, or I can take it as, yeah, just don't associate with these materialistic persons or these or these. And I take it more like as a warning to be aware. Like there's this saying that osmosis always happens. We're always influenced by others. And so to be aware, where do I want to just be freely influenced because it's all good? And where do I want to be aware and cautious of what I'm taking on because I might be, dragged down in my consciousness or. And what I also wanted to comment on devotional service. So when we engage in devotional service, all the grudges disappear. And so what's the point of personal growth or personal work, pulling the weeds? When I look at my own experience, I can say that singing kirtan always works. I can be in a really bad state.
Yeah.
And when I kirtan, it's all gone and I'm in a blissful place.
Yeah.
And yet there's other things like chanting. I know like my chanting is a lot more clear and focused. For example, after the recent advanced seminar, I was a lot more focused in my chanting, at least for a while, after
Yes.
doing a lot of personal clearing work.
Yes.
So it seems both is true, maybe.
Yeah. Both is true. Thank you, Anandi. Thanks very much for that. And here's the thing. See, the clearing work, the pulling the weeds, it's not separate from the process of bhakti. And yes, Rukmini writes, the quality of Nirmat Saranam Saptam, honesty is emphasized in the Srimad Bhagavatam as a spiritual process, taking care of the weeds. Yeah, the whole process of bhakti, it's described at Al Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sangato Bhajana Kriya Tato Nartani Vritti Shat. It's a 9-step process, and one of the processes is called Anarta Nivritti, getting rid of all those unwanted things, getting rid of all those unwanted things, the deception, the manipulation, the emotional violence, the hiding behind grungy shame. It's not separate from the process that can help. It's part of the process. Now that comes up. So it's actually our responsibility, to the extent that we're sincere in the process of self-realization and Krishna consciousness, to deal with that in a way that's aligned and energizing for strengthening the one in front of the zeros, not just some idle analysis paralysis, personal growth, looking at self-defeating beliefs. What's the grungy under the grungy under the grungy, in a way that's separate from self-realization, because then it can become just this, it can become an art in itself, using our personal growth to avoid actual personal growth. So as Rukmini wrote, and we're emphasizing, like even this, like sattvic communication, it's integral to the process of bhakti. We quoted on Thursday at Lord Chaitanya's appearance day. Lord Chaitanya speaks to, he's listening to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya for many days, just listening. And Prabhupada says, if we want to attract intelligent people to this Krishna consciousness movement, we need to be really good listeners. So it's that good listening, that's separate. No, it's integral to the process, and we don't want to go there in a way that's detached from the one in front of the zeros. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Anandini. Bhaktin Rosa.
Hare Krishna. After Thursday and listening to the talk about impersonalism and Mayavadis, I had a lot going on for me in consideration of that. And I think a lot of my going back and forth was like, do we cut off, right? And that like lack of tolerance, or but you specifically said during that talk that a devotee listens to all of it because an impersonalist path is successful, right? They can achieve through that.
An impersonal realization of the absolute is completely valid.
Yeah.
It's a valid perspective and realization of the absolute.
And then tying that into today, it makes me think of like the second graders, right? Like 2
Yeah.
3 equals 4,
Okay,
and
yeah,
like
yeah.
meeting them where they're at, and that's
Yeah.
that's what they need. I have like 10 different thoughts and I'm gonna forget them. Going back to other sharing today and thinking about how to associate with the people in our lives in a way that's tolerant and compassionate. And one of the ways, consideration that I have is, all of the things that we want, right? The dancing and the singing and the food
Yeah.
and the association, and how to raise the quality in our association with others that don't partake in ways that we do, right? How to be present with them. Because in that same way, in just being with them and what they are able to do, it has them open to us and what we may do, right?
People don't care what you know till they know that you care. Oftentimes a great way to care is empathy first with ourselves
Mhm.
and with others.
And being decided on boundaries around food and consumption,
Yeah.
and not just food, but like you're saying, how we associate with like articles or other objects in media and things in relation to others, and where's the happy medium in meeting them and keeping our boundaries. Those are all thoughts.
Yeah, yeah, I would say it. Yeah, that, and also like, you know, I tend to cultivate a conscious where it's not like them or us,
Mhm.
right? Like I'm in my process, on my path. I don't know what's in their heart in relation to God. Maybe externally they have habits. And my responsibility is like, okay, based on what I'm seeing, what are healthy boundaries here? But I'm not making ultimate judgment about what's in their heart as far as their level of self-realization or God consciousness. And so, yeah, go on.
So a good example is just like dinner, right? It's a
Yeah.
very common cultural thing. When someone wants to connect with you, they're going to invite you to dinner. And, you know, to whatever extent that they are not in
Yeah.
association, like they don't have these things, I can communicate, like I don't eat meat and fish and eggs.
Yeah.
And that's easy enough, but, you know, it won't be prashad.
Yeah.
And then making choices about that and
Making choices. Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, thanks for sharing, Bhakti Rosa. I hear you're in your process. You're in your process and like looking at, okay, in this practicing Krishna consciousness, what for you in different areas of life, including dinner or food, what would seem like what would seem too extreme, and same time what would seem like not honoring your integrity in your in your boundaries to progress like that. I appreciate your process. Sydney.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, my Aunt Dominique, she's navigated that in a really interesting way throughout the years, like, because, you know, her mother and father and my family also on, her side have always been meat eaters and things like that, and they gather around food and, very different food practices and stuff.
Yeah.
than Dominique and stuff, and I think it's gotten to a really good place, like, the past few years recently.
Experience have taken over.
Yeah, totally. But in the beginning, there was some discomfort, right? Because it wasn't being communicated perfectly or expectations
Yeah.
weren't communicated well or whatever on both sides. But I think we now share food, like you would bring enough to share with everyone and not just say, oh, I'm not going to do this. I think bringing what you want just to relieve others of the duty of having to accommodate, and then sharing what you have with them.
Yeah.
And being in that like sharing spaces, I think what's worked the best.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to bring that up because it's been years of her trying to get us all in. And now, like, you know, she brought me around to this.
Yeah.
Personal consciousness in general. And she would bring, we would do like a little kirtan moment and stuff, and we'd sing, and she'd bring us a little song sheets and stuff at family gatherings. And so she's found out how to do that in a way that's not pushy or anything. And that's why I'm here, because I didn't feel pushed. I just liked it. So I think there's ways to share without being,
Instead of being so concerned about how to join others, create an environment where you can invite them to join you.
yes,
Mm.
that is genuinely why I'm here right now. Mhm.
Eloquently expressed. Thank you, Sydney. I appreciate hearing your experience and realization and your appreciation for your Aunt Dominique. Too, and I'll say, like, my experience with myself and there's everyone, the hundreds and thousands who I personally seen, kind of like endeavoring to embrace bhakti. These are the sorts of questions and practical opportunities and challenges that they're facing. So thanks for sharing. Amy.
In the purport, it talks about Krishna Loka,
Yeah.
planet in the spiritual sky.
Yeah.
Can you share more around that? What is?
Sure.
That?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I didn't mention that in the class, and that opens the whole door. The whole door. So just like we say, that there are okay, so there's material relationship, that's a shadow, and there's spiritual relationship. There's material dancing that entangles us further in illusion. There's spiritual dancing that liberates us to self-realization. And there's material food and there's spiritual food. And okay, so everything. So there are material planets and spiritual planets. Ultimately, it's a matter of consciousness. So there's a whole Vedic astronomy. It's a fascinating topic. And I love that topic. And actually, it's a fascinating topic. And so there's, and even in material astronomy, right? Like every day, certainly every year, they're discovering new planets, new moons. Okay, it's just like, no, everything that we know now in the science of astronomy, that's it. No, so they're discovering more and more. So there's a whole spiritual astronomy. The Vedas also give material astronomy in quite fascinating ways. It actually going back to the Vedas describe, a Vedas from 5,000 years ago describe like the distance between the planes of the ecliptics of different planets. Okay, now according to modern history and anthropology, in India 5,000 years ago at that time, basically they knew how to run, and they had their clubs. So how were they? And they were making calculations that like now, like they're just beginning to make maybe in the 1950s. So we need to revamp our whole. So there's spiritual planets, and we spirit there's a consciousness of spiritual planet, and we devote ourselves to God consciousness. Then we're living in the spiritual world. Okay, and we might appear. It's like, let's say someone like Jesus or Srila Prabhupada. They're completely in the spiritual planet. They're in Krishna Loka, and kind of even in their activities here, it's like an embassy. It's just like if you have the embassy of France here in the United States. Actually, the embassy itself, it's French territory. It's not United States territory. So a pure devotee, they're on a spiritual planet here. So there's a consciousness of spiritual planet, then there's a geography of spiritual planet. And you might say that in the innermost recesses of all the spiritual planets, there's the Krishna Loka planet. And again, it opens up a wonderful topic, and it's a topic I love to discuss. And then it's just, we read Prabhupada's books, hear Prabhupada's lecture, we get more and more information about Krishna Loka. And just like, even, thanks for your question, because even here in the purport, a lot of it, Prabhupada's making like a travel brochure. Okay, just like, yeah, visit Tokyo, we see, visit Paris, yeah, visit Moscow. It's like a brochure. So Prabhupada's giving us like a travel brochure. Like he's wanting us to be captivated by descriptions of Krishna Loka. So that, yeah, I want to go, just like, oh yeah, I want to visit. Yeah, I want to visit Rome. Okay, yeah, so let me live my life. Let me clear my schedule, save the money. I want to visit Rome. I saw in the brochure. Wow. So Prabhupada's giving us a travel brochure for Krishna Loka, encouraging us, not forcing, encouraging us to live our life to be able to get the ticket for Krishna Loka. Thank you, Haley. Bhagavad Gita ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Thank you. Thank you for this enlivening association and conversation. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.